thank you again for speaking with some of our students and our faculty here at the School of Business at Medgar Evers College. We're excited to have you present to us today and talk about, what it means to be a tech entrepreneur. And I would like for you to tell us more about your journey to becoming a tech entrepreneur with MoviePass and Urbanworld, and how you fared since 2020 with the launch of COVID that kind of changed the dynamics for everyone in business. So again, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It really is an honor. And I wish we were all gathered together, but we will make do with us being here in our virtual world, but thank you. So I'll tell a little bit about myself, but I really want to make today interactive and use this as time to be able to answer any personal questions that you might have on your own journey or different stages or things that you want to do. One of the big things that I won't get into too much of the detail because of the time restraints, but I just released a book called Black Founder, which walks through kind of the patterns of what I had to go through to be able to get some of the companies up, some of the failures and the things I learned along the way. So if you want to really dive into a deep dive, you'll be able to do that there. So again, thank you all for joining and coming. A little bit of my bio and background. So I'm originally from Houston, Texas, and I grew up in a really loving home with two parents. Both of my parents went to Grambling University. And when I was growing up, I think one of the things that really helped that entrepreneurial spirit was coming up with the stupidest ideas and parents never saying that they were stupid. Very unrealistic things that I wanted to do as a kid. And when I graduated from high school, I had this brilliant idea that I was going to go to Los Angeles and be a star. I don't know what that meant, but I can tell you the exact moment I knew where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. My father, after school one day, I begged him to take me to see Blade Runner. And we went to see Blade Runner, and my brother was on one side of my father saying, "Can we leave? This is the most boring movie I've ever seen." And my dad was actually asleep and snoring in the theater, and it was just the three of us. And I was sitting on the other side, and I was so mesmerized seeing flying cars and all the special effects and things. And I said, I don't know what this is, but I want to work in this field. I want to be in this. And so I moved out to Los Angeles right after I graduated from high school. I was supposed to go to Grambling, and I didn't. I told my parents I wanted to take a leap year, a gap year, and I went off, and I ended up not coming back. And I had a few lucky breaks. I was working 3 part-time jobs, and a friend of mine said, "Hey, Barry Gordy sold Motown to Universal. They're moving into Los Angeles, and you should go interview." And I went on the interview. I got the job, and I was a gopher in the art department for Motown, the new Motown. And it didn't know what it wanted to be yet. It was still the old legacy. So you had the Temptations and Stevie Wonder and the Supremes and Diana Ross, but it hadn't become the new Motown yet. And so there were these positions, and I ended up getting the lucky break of becoming a product manager. The product manager was the same as artist development. So artist development recorded the album, and the product manager was in charge of marketing it and helping it to get released. And so long story short, one of my bands was Boyz II Men. One of my groups was Boyz II Men, and we all kind of know what happened. Boyz II Men became huge. They took off, and I was younger than the guys myself, but I was their product manager. And within 4 years, I had Boyz II Men, Stevie Wonder, all of the Spike Lee soundtracks, Eddie Murphy and Queen Latifah were all my artists by the time I was 21 years old. And so really, I was just at the right place at the right time. And the next thing you knew, Sony called me and they wanted me to come over and do the soundtrack for Bad Boys and work on some of their projects. I went over there in the first Will Smith, Martin Lawrence film, Bad Boys. I did all of the marketing for that. And backing up on Boyz II Men, one of the big hallmarks of my time there was we broke Elvis Presley's record for 52 weeks at -- with the song End of the Road, which I'm sure all of you heard once or twice in your life. So the only song that's broken, I think, at 53 weeks is Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You. I think she holds the record at 53 weeks. And that was a huge accomplishment. So from there, I went to Sony, and while I was there, I did all the marketing for things like Bad Boys. And at one point, we had the #1 single, the #1 movie, the #1 video, the #1 album, all at the same time. And that had never happened before. And so kind of, I was featured a lot as, Hollywood Reporter had 30 Under 30. I was featured in that. And then I got a call from Miramax, and I went on to be their vice president of marketing. I think I was 24 or 25 at the time. And they ended up, I did Scream, I did Train Spotting, I did The Crow, there's quite a few franchises that are still around. I did Hellraiser, a few others that are all still around today. So I did all of the marketing for those. And I can get into what all that entails if you guys are interested, but I'll get more to the entrepreneurial parts. So I had really had a good time in the movie and music industry. But one of the things that I kept noticing was when I was in the music side, working at Motown, it was predominantly people of color. When I got to the movie industry, there was no people of color. And that was a really big eye awakening. And so what I did was I launched Urbanworld Film Festival, which was a way to try and give us recognizing ourselves. And one of the press outlets recently called Urbanworld the cinema's answer to what was Showtime at the Apollo back in the day. And so there's been a lot of great talent that's come out of Urbanworld. Ava DuVernay, the director, came out of Urbanworld. Tim Story, who directed Fantastic Four. If you've seen The Best Man with Malcolm Lee, he came out of Urbanworld. So there's a lot of really great talent. Rosario Dawson is another talent. Kerry Washington, they were all running around the festival before they really had become big names. And so that festival now is in its 25th, 26th year. It's crazy how long it's been. And it's the largest in the world. And then while we were in the middle of doing that, around 2005, we started noticing that there was this really big tsunami coming, which was in the form of subscription services for media and entertainment. So you had Netflix, you had Spotify, you had Pandora, and you could just see it coming. And so I said, why don't we have something like that in the theatrical space? And that led to creating MoviePass. And so in 2012, we launched MoviePass as the nation's first theatrical subscription service, took it all the way up. So at this point, I'm a full entrepreneur. I'm completely on my own. And we launched that in 2012. 2017, we had an exit. The company was valued at around $500 million. So we took a $10 million investment turn it into a $500 million asset. The private equity group that bought the company, there were two things that were at play. One was, as founders, and this is some of the stuff I get into in the book, if you want to be an entrepreneur, I think that I'm aware of, my book is the only book about tech founders and giving you that behind the scenes look. But one of the things that we quickly noticed was they had us as founders locked up for a 12-month period that we couldn't sell our stock. And then the other thing is they wanted us to drop the price point from $30 to $10 and have 100,000 people come and join the platform with that announcement. So we thought it would take a few months, but when we dropped the price, we got 100,000 people in less than 48 hours. And the thing just took off like a rocket. And I said to them, those people are not sustainable. There's no way we can make money. And they said, well, we know what we're doing. And they didn't like the fact that I was challenging them. And I got an email after about 4 months of the deal. And then they basically fired me and kicked me out of my own company. So I talk about in the book ways that you can lose your company without knowing it. And, historically, a lot of people of color, especially entertainers and sports athletes in the early days, used to lose their businesses and lose things. So I talk a lot about that. And if you haven't read it, please do educate yourself about some of those pitfalls. But anyway, so the company grew to 3 million users, $500 million valuation, and was a top line revenue of $450 million a year in under 12 months. And yeah, exactly, just like Steve Jobs. And so the thing that it had proven that the demand was high, the popularity was high, it was a very viable business, and they ended up going bankrupt in just under 12 months. So COVID hit, I started another business. The new business that I founded actually deals with blockchain and making it that we can actually control our own attention. So imagine if you could watch an ad, but you got paid for it rather than Facebook keeping the money. So we built a platform that allows you to monetize your own attention, but you get paid for it. And it turns into digital currency, and you can use it for whatever you want. So we had the idea, well, let's make it for movie tickets or for gaming credits, because that's a really cheap, lower barrier to entry. And so with that company, I found out, well, let me back up for a second. So Mark Wahlberg heard about my story. And so his company reached out, and they wanted to make a documentary with HBO about the whole MoviePass thing. And so I optioned them the rights, and they started shooting the doc. And in the middle of shooting the documentary, the rights for MoviePass became available again. And so I was like, I gotta go get my baby back. And so I took the money from my current company. I went back and bought MoviePass back out of bankruptcy for $140,000 last year. And we relaunched it. And already in the first 90 days of relaunch, so we relaunched it in January, so we're 120 days in, we're already tracking at a $20 million ARR. We've onboarded already north of 100,000 customers. And we're working on some pretty major deals that are going to be announced soon. So in 4 days, we had over 800,000 people join the wait list for the new service. So I can't be happier about the progress that we're making. We did a capital raise. Animoca Brands, who is the #1 Web3 investor in the world, led our funding round along with Harlem Capital. and a company called Claritas. And that kind of brings us to the current. And so I'll talk a little bit about the future of what I see and where I think cinema's going and what we're facing ahead. So first off, I don't believe that people are going to stop going to movies. I think that's a little like saying people are going to stop going to concerts. They're going to stop going to sporting events. They're going to stop going to amusement parks. And a lot of people don't realize that movie going is the #1 out-of-home entertainment activity in the world. So people go to the movies as often, people go to the movies twice as often that they do going to all sporting events, all amusement parks, and all music events combined. So that's something a lot of people don't realize. And young people use it as a very accessible form of entertainment. So we don't see it going anywhere. But what we do see is the movie industry needs some technology upgrades. It still operates the way it did for the last 100 years. And we think there's some really good software solutions that we can bring to market to help make that upgrade possible. So we see MoviePass as kind of like the Airbnb to travel. So if you use the metaphor that the movie that you want to go see is the city that you're visiting, the theater that you go to is kind of where you're going to stay while you're there, and the when you go and how you pay for everything is kind of like where the software comes in. And so we believe that, you know, the history of cinema has been what we call TVOD, transactional video on demand. That means you buy a ticket and you go. Then SVOD, which is subscription video on demand, is when you have a subscription service that you can pay a single fee and you can go a la carte or go as often as you want. So MoviePass introduced the SVOD approach. The third one is a freemium product where people can go to the movies completely free, which is called AVOD, so ad-supported video on demand. So we believe that when you deploy all three of those, you give cinema a much bigger window. And even if you get 30% of customers to become subscribers or ad supporters, you double the size of the pie of the industry. So that's really our objective, is to be able to have a subscription vertical and an ad-supported vertical or a freemium product, and have it at a global scale and end up achieving being the largest theatrical subscription service in the world. So we are looking at India, we're looking at Mexico, South America, Canada, Europe, and parts of Asia. So the goal is to run as fast as possible. And the beauty of our business is you have all movies, so you're the largest movie studio with content, and you have all theaters, so you're the largest theater footprint. But kind of like Uber and Airbnb, we don't have the responsibility of managing physical locations or needing to buy vehicles and incur that heavy debt cost or production cost. So it's kind of a beautiful win-win scenario where we get to use software as a solution that lets you fly in under the radar and get that done that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do. So that is a long-winded, long breath of, you know, kind of what we do and where we are and how I personally got there. And what I'd love to do is kind of open it up to Q&A for the next 45 minutes. And I can deep dive into things you may want to know specifically, or questions you may have about your own career and path. So I open it up to you.
Thank you. While our guests are formulating their questions, they'll come on mic or they can put their questions in the chat. There are some things that I want to ask you just to get us going. You told us a lot of information, and it's wonderful how you found a space for yourself in the industry, music and movies, marketing. I mean, you've touched on so many areas that our students study here at the college. We have our 5 majors of economics and finance, business administration, accounting, public administration, and computer information systems. And I can see any of our graduates fitting into some aspect of what you've done working for companies, and then taking what you've done working for companies and starting your own business. I wanted to ask you, keeping those things in mind, what can some of our students potentially do to while they're studying, to prepare themselves to enter into the industry, and learn about what needs to be done, and then build out a career in possibly entrepreneurship, and even those who aren't interested in being an entrepreneur, just get in the industry, particularly an industry where you let us know that it's very different moving from the music where you were in the music space where it was predominantly people of color, and Black people, moving into to movies where you entered a space that was predominantly white. How did what can our students prepare to navigate these spaces?
That's a great question. So yeah, I think there's my particular path was getting some experience at someone else's cost and being paid during that apprenticeship time period, where I learned a lot of the disciplines of the craft, right? I learned about how to get your whole message down to 30 seconds. I learned about how, if you have a poster, you might only have, 4 or 5 words you can use that'll entice a person to take that next step. And just to explain a little bit, the difference between PR, social media, and marketing. Marketing is I spend money to get you to buy my product. PR and publicity is you try not to spend money. You use editorial space or social space to create the same outcome. And so that's the difference between the two. So the marketing departments tended to have budgets. And in the movie industry specifically, under my budget, I had the poster, I had the trailer that you see on YouTube, and then are in theaters. And then I had the, in addition to that, I also had any materials that would live on the website that you would go and you would see those materials, and you would be able to get any information that makes you want to go more. So that's kind of what I did on those 3. And I would say having that craft and learning all of those things, that made it possible for me to then move forward into the area. Now, let's say you write code and you have ideas and you have things that you want to do that you already, then you can go and launch an app or launch a product straight in school, and you really don't have to wait. But the craft that I had to learn specifically took years to be able to get there and have some credibility in the marketplace. As far as getting in places, I think internships are really important and smart. Write people and just get your foot in the door, get in there somehow, and then go from there, and you'll figure out the lay of the land. Sometimes you get into a place and there's stuff you thought you wanted to do, but you want to do something else. You're still in the same team, but maybe you don't want to be a pitcher. You might want to play third base, if that makes sense.
Thank you. How did you enter the international market? I mean, you went from a long way from being domestic, and building your company, it not working out the way you wanted it to work out. buying it back, which is fantastic. And now you've moved a lot of your interest into international market to help build your company back up. How did that happen?
We've always, cinema is a global game, and whether you produce content created in Asia and it comes to the US, or you create content in the US and it goes out among, around the world, you no matter what, you basically usually have global. Can you do a global play, right? Can you make a product that goes into all territories? And with software, it makes it very easy. Smartphones and software allow you to deploy into any territory. So we don't have the same, today with software, you don't have the same lengths of times. If you had to build something boots on the ground and you had to do it the long, slow way. So we've just had aspirations to go there no matter what. And that's our big plans.
Thanks. Dr. Zarbawal, you have a question.
Oh, yes. Thank you. So very nice to meet you and join this call, Mr. Spikes. Just a little bit about myself. I'm a finance professor here at Medgar Evers College. My research area has recently gotten into entrepreneurship, but from the finance side.
Yeah.
And I was at a movie theater, which is in a mall connected to a Barnes & Noble, and I walked past your book. This was maybe 2 months ago.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I took a picture of the book and said, okay, maybe after the movie I'll get it. Barnes & Noble closed before I could get it, but I have the picture of it. And then I saw this announcement. I said, this is the guy who is talking about my research, whose book I need to get. So it's amazing how everything works out.
That's great.
I have 2 questions.
Sure.
My first question, outside my area, but I want to know, how did you build your team? Maybe the first team and the second team. How did you build your team?
Great question. So the way I personally did it is you usually are starting from engineering. I'm not an engineer. I don't have the ability to write code, but I do kind of like, I think Sho mentioned like the Steve Jobs effect. I'm more of a marketing guy. Like I back up from what I think the product should be. And then I tell engineering, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you make it like this? And then I have them build it. It's kind of like you imagine it in your mind and you walk backwards. So one of the things that I did want to do, and we can do this together, is I wanted to walk through how you go from idea to prototype, to product, to market, to launch, and we can walk through all of that. But what I do as far as hiring is I start with my engineering piece. I build an MVP, and for those who don't know, that's a minimum viable product. So you make the cheapest version of what you're trying to show people. If let's say I'm making a vacuum cleaner, you get all the parts and you make one vacuum cleaner, and you're going to show that to someone, whether it's investors or potential customers for pre-orders. You want to show, I've built a vacuum cleaner that has suction power 10 times the next vacuum cleaner, and it's more ergonomic and environmentally friendly, right? So if I want to make a vacuum cleaner, I want to find engineers who can help me build the best vacuum cleaner. And so whatever it is your product is, start with that. Don't hire people yet. Just go freelance and get the money, save up the money to be able to build one prototype. That's the first thing you do. And then from there, if you get funding and you get things, you start to add on members of the team based on what your goal is and what you need to accomplish.
Great. That makes a lot of sense, especially what I might not have known before about getting that prototype out before you scale up on human resources.
Oh yeah, you want to stay, we use the term, you want to stay as skinny as you can, because the problem is once you take on weight, and weight meaning in the form of staff, you might have long, let's say you have a retailer that really likes your product, but they want a hose that's 2 feet long instead of 1 foot long. And it takes you 6 months because they're on this, you know, if you had hired a very big staff at that point, that's 6 months, you could have $100,000 a month burn because you thought, let's go, and I'm ready. And so you need to stay as skinny as you can until you actually have revenue or orders. Try not to hire people until you have sight line into revenue. You know, don't sign contracts with staff. Do everything freelance, where people may you might have it set up where you pay them by invoices, you pay them by the hour, but try not to staff up. That's a very big mistake. People get overconfident about their time frame, and they pay a big price for that.
So this is super interesting. Everything you're saying is actually leading directly into my second question, but I just want to comment on what you're saying because I'm old enough, unlike some of the people on here, I remember 90s internet explosion and that word burn that you used. And these .com companies were burning hardcore. I don't know where they got the money from, but they were not doing what you said. Apparently, today we've learned that that's not the best way to go. Amazon is a famous example of not making profit for years and years, just burning cash while they scale up. But everything you're saying is showing we've learned since then. So that brings me to my second question about financing.
Yeah.
In your first exit to the PE, to the private equity, can you tell me kind of what type of equity you sold to them? Was it preferred equity with control? And maybe you could say what that means to students.
Yes. So there's different exits. There's traditionally 3 kinds. Cash, they buy out your company, they pull up a Brinks truck and they just give you a boatload of money. That's the ultimate preferred 100% buyout. We bought your company. Then there is stock. They don't give you cash, but they give you their stock, and hopefully it's a healthy stock. And they basically say we're going to pay the equivalent, but we're going to pay you in stock. And that stock may vest or it may happen all at once. Then the third option is kind of a mixture of those two. It's cash and stock. Most of the time when someone's buying a company versus just investing in it, buying means 51%. So somewhere between 51, they have a controlling interest, to 100%, that's buying a company. Under 51%, that's investing in a company. You're investing in it. And so what we ended up having was they bought 51% of what the company was valued at the time. They put in 25 cash, and they were putting in another amount of stock. So it was cash and stock deal. And they were publicly traded, so we were getting their publicly traded stock. And when I say that the company became valued at $500 million, their share price before they acquired us was $2 a share. When they announced that they were acquiring us and the stock that we were going to get, their share price went from $2 to $38 a share.
Oh, that's a huge pop.
Right, so that they call that the pop, you know. So, so basically, then through mismanagement, it kept falling and falling and falling, and they ultimately got delisted because of the fact that, you know, they didn't know what they were doing. So those are the 3.
I hate to get spiritual, but karma is real.
Yeah. They didn't treat people right. And the other thing is, you know, one of the hard thing, and this is, you know, when I talked about staying as skinny as possible, you know, if you're a diverse founder, you're gonna have longer longer runways. You have to go without more than other people. You're going to get less value. And these things are slowly changing. But if you go in with that understanding and mindset, you won't be as easily disappointed. You know, I have been a very successful business executive even before I became an entrepreneur. And that guideline about 1% of African Americans getting venture capital is real. And you will see.
That's what my research is about right now. So yeah, it's just exciting to hear that.
Yeah, so you will see that it's kind of like when you hear about people going and buying a home and them not getting financed, even though they make a lot of money, and you could have a white family come in and they've got bad credit and they have a lot of debt, and yet they can get better financing. It's like things like that happen to you. Some of us entrepreneurs in the business used to call it black tax, or we still kind of do call it that, but you get hit with these invisible taxes that are unique to you, and you got to just plow through them. You can't take it personal. You just got to move through it and understand that's just part of the game. I think today we're still in a time period that venture capital is still in almost an apartheid era, where there's like separate drinking fountains where people of color will get, there'll be the diversity fund over here, which is like saying, well, that's the black drinking fountain, but you're not going to be included in the overall fund. And yet they don't deploy, they park 10% of the money, but they don't deploy 10%. They deploy 1% to African Americans, another 1% to Latinos, and then our Latinx, and another percentage to women-owned businesses. So that's just some of the realities that are out there. So hopefully I answered the second question that you.
No, that was a really powerful answer. It actually made me come up with the third question, but I'll give the students a chance before I get greedy. But I do have a third now that you answered my second.
All right, we'll come back. So how did you deal with fear? Hold on, let me pull it back up. It disappeared on me. How did you deal with fear and doubt towards some of your projects or ideas, and/or what advice would you give? That is a great question. I have a game that I play with myself. Truth, this is truth. I try to create a separate persona. So when I was young, when I was in high school, I read every entrepreneur book I could get. I read Richard Branson, I read David Geffen, I read Sam Walton, I read Sumner Redstone, who ultimately created Viacom. I read all of these guys' books. They were all white men, and I would always ask myself when I'm afraid or something's coming or I don't know what to do, I'd say, what would the white boys do? And I literally will ask myself that. And I would say, what would they do? They would just go do it. And if they failed, they'd get up. And, our last president filed for bankruptcy 7 times and still became president of the United States. And I think they moved through the world without this baggage of fear of failure. We have so little money and so few chances. We're far more timid and afraid to make a mistake. And I've learned to ask myself, what would they do? And do move like that and act like that. And sure, I think you'll have fear and doubt, but I got the rare opportunity one day to sit in a meeting with Ben from Ben and Jerry's Ice Cream. They had sold the company, and Ben was looking to make a theme park that was based on the Ben and Jerry different ice cream. So you would have, Rocky Road Mountain, and you would have Cookie Crumble Lake, or whatever they were gonna, and he was presenting this to Sony when I was there. And so everybody had this bio break and got up, and it was just me and Ben from Ben and Jerry's still sitting in the meeting. And I asked them, I said, if you could say one thing to a young person, what would you say? And he said, I would tell young people, you have to be willing to build it wrong in order to build things right. And he talked about the first version, and it's just him and I sitting in the room. And he talked about the first time when they were building Ben and Jerry's ice cream. It had a different name, and everyone told him you have to whip the cream very high, and you need to just put sprinkles of what flavor it is on the top. Don't put it all the way through. And they did that company, and that company failed because they were like every other company. And he said, we were two fat boys from Vermont, and we used to take our ice cream and take Oreos and crumble them in our hand and mix them up and then put it back in the freezer. And he said, we made it how we wanted to make it, and everyone said we would go out of business. And he said, we built $1 billion business that way. And so he talked about that passion. And so I always go back to listen to your voice. God didn't bring you here. You're not here by mistake. If there's an idea in you, then he put it in you for you to help bring that. He gave you that journey. And so dare greatly. That other quote I love is, be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid. And it's really important to live that way, because no entrepreneurial journey, whether you're Black or white, is for the faint of heart or people who aren't willing to look bad. TD Jakes said, oh God, what did TD say? TD said, what you do, you have to be willing to do things badly in order to be great at them. And I'd say that's very true. Other questions? Don't be shy. Y'all get one of the, USA Today named me one of the top 20 most influential Blacks in technology in the world. You guys have me for another 20 minutes. Y'all better take advantage of me. All right. Okay, let me get this one. So the question is, how did you I feel like I should have gotten used to it, but still surprised that people keep failing before this is it. Yeah, so mathematically, and then David, I'll go to you. Mathematically, the average founder, and so don't believe the headlines, the average successful founder is in their 40s and has failed at least 3 times before they're successful. Don't forget that. It's not, and let me tell you this part, it's not failing, it's learning. You're not really failing, you're learning how to build things. There's no way I could know what I know now when I was in my 20s. There's no way. So I had to, I never went bankrupt, but I failed down a couple of times and had at least 2 businesses go under. And so, but you learn what you learn, and there's no other way to learn that but to go through it. David.
All right, so hello. I was gonna ask about, I heard you talk about blockchain and like a certain idea, and I was very interested in like, I know that like the future of businesses is gonna be built on like blockchain and everything, and I wanted to know like, what would be your advice in a sense of like working towards blockchain, and like, I feel like that's just like how the world is going towards, you know?
In blockchain, so I spoke last week at NFT NYC. It was really good, and I'd say application is really important. It's a catch-all phrase. It's kind of like saying the internet. So I think how you use it with a product is going to be critical. So let's say we're back at Web 2. And we're all, blockchain is the equivalent of us throwing around the net or the internet. Well, it was really, how do you plan on using that? If you have a car dealership, if you want to run a store online, if you want to, and all, Amazon was started just as a bookseller because books were not perishable. They didn't have to stock inventory, and they were basically allowing people to put a cover of a book and put in the information, and it made it very easy. So they started out as booksellers, and then they took other non-perishables and they kept putting that, and then they kept growing from there. But I would say you need to really get specific about use case and adoptability. And if it's too hard for customers, like right now, like the NFT world it's great for art aficionados, but it is not practical for the average person to go get an NFT, to mint it on the chain, and then put it in their wallet. Is it a hot wallet or a cold wallet? Where's my encryption key? Is it stored on my computer? Is it in my phone? Do I have it in my head? That's the stuff that you kind of have to think through. So blockchain is a big word, but think of application.
I appreciate it.
Yep. Okay.
I have a question for her. How long was it before you left your day job, so to speak, and really committed full time to being an entrepreneur?
I got fired. So I was,
That will do it.
If you want to become an entrepreneur fast, get fired. So I had started Urbanworld on the side because I always had side hustles, you just do. And then what ended up happening was I was vice president at what is now Focus Features. So it was one of the larger independents here in New York. And they wouldn't renew my contract, and I got fired. And the movie industry had gone through a consolidation period, and on the East Coast there was, I had my wife and I had no place to really go, and so I started my company because I lost my job, and that's literally how I began. I'd like to tell you a wonderful story of on the 5th of May and this date, I woke up one morning and I stuck the flag in the sand and said, I am going to go out and create my own business. No, I freaking lost my job and I needed to figure out how I was going to pay the bills. Show put in, so let me put it, do you have any idea or opinion to share why they seem to have limited data analysis opportunities? Is it like the industry cultural thing? I also found that your company accepts open applications. Would this be an opportunity for a job seeker like myself? If so, how can I make myself a good candidate as a data analyst at your company? Yes. So we post our positions online. We're always looking for people. Even if we find really talented people and they're not an immediate hire, we'd like to stay in contact with them. We have a data analyst that we have, but you're always looking for multiple people to try and really parse your data. Because if you're running a technology company, it's all about the horsepower of processing information for your decision making. The other thing is it's really important today to do storytelling through your data. I really wish we were all together. And Ms. Bennett, if there is a point down the road, I'd love to come and do this in person so for example, I would love to show you guys our map that we have that's a heat map where you can look up what movies people see by zip code. Another thing we do is I could walk you guys through our analytics and how we parse that data and information. Everything is numbers. It's all, you're taking human behavior, you're taking software integration, you're taking a phone product that someone has in hand, and you're figuring out a way to help them make decisions and save them money, period. That's what you're doing, no matter what sector you're in. Whether it's a vacuum cleaner and you're gonna help them clean faster, you know, your job is to help save time and money. That's it. As long as you keep your eye on that, if you are altruistic and talk about it makes them feel good, that's not, be careful. But you want a business that saves people time and money. And then you need to create data feedback loops, very fast loops that you learn. And so I look at my numbers daily. I know what the grosses are every weekend. We calculate increase and decrease in attendance on, we look at who's going, where they're going. We can tell what different populations are seeing. So when there's a Bollywood movie, how that plays. I can also tell the data when Jesus Revolution dropped and what markets that played in. I can see when there's a Muslim title, how it plays. Like I can go down beneath the data, and we can also see who goes, how far they're going from their house, how often they go, who they go with. It's amazing, it's beautiful. And then what you're doing is you're figuring out how to make the experience better for people using that data. So, but yeah, if you see open applications, submit, you know. And the last question about how you make yourself, you know, have a good CV, do the standard things people do. And again, get out there, make a name for yourself, offer if you can to volunteer or do projects for free. Sometimes companies will take you up on that. Sometimes if they don't know you, they won't, especially if it's data, because people get sensitive. But they may throw you on a project, or if there's a lead, you might support that lead and that person may give you limited data. So things like that. Like we hired a person and said, build us a map of our, we gave him a user table and we paid him $1,000 to go build a map of where our people are going, what they're seeing, and rank by zip code what the top 10 movies are by zip. And that was just a project that we did. But that person will be able to say, I built this map for MoviePass, and put that, you know, here's some of the projects that I've done. This is great. You guys are doing good. All right, let's see. We've got 12 more minutes. What else?
Can I circle back to my number 3 if nobody else has one?
Absolutely.
Thanks. So you talked a little bit about your experience with the private equity, and you briefly mentioned the valuation. Since I'm a finance professor, I'd like to hear from a non-finance guy, what was your experience with arriving at that number? How did they explain it to you? Where did you understand that valuation number to be coming from?
Valuation is made up of 3 things: what you want, what they want to pay, and what market averages are. So people look for comparables. So let me give you an example. Right now, so we are a subscription media company. Subscription companies are valued in 2 ways: either a 4 to 6x of your ARR, which is your annual reoccurring revenue, or a 2 to 5x of what's called your LTM, your last 12 months of revenue, okay? That's industry standard. More people use ARR and so a way that ARR is determined in a subscription business is it takes the number of subscribers you have, the approximate churn, and your steady state of growth, and it calculates over the next 12 months, what will your annual reoccurring revenue be? And like I said, we're right around 20 million a year with only 100,000 people on the platform. So so what that does is that they then are willing to pay 4x what, and 4 is an average. So it might be 2, it might be 6, it could be 10. But 4 is a good litmus of the average. So let's say you want 6x, and let's say the buyer wants 2x. Then the rest is haggling to get to a number. And sometimes, is it all cash? Is it cash and stock? Is it all stock? And that's, will your founders be able to take something off the table? Because they've been taking a less than market salary for some time because they're trying to build a business, and they got a lot of debt that they've created, or they owe people money, or friends and family have supported them along the way.
I'm sorry, Mr. Spikes. I just didn't mean to interrupt you, but can you clarify a little bit more? What do you mean by 4x and a 2x?
Sorry. Yes.
I'm not in business at all. And I was like, wait, no.
I'm sorry, I'm a finance guy, so I was just like, he's speaking my language. I forgot.
It's okay. I studied history.
Yeah.
So I'm just lost. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's a multiple of your annual. So 4x would be 4 times your ARR, your annual reoccurring revenue, or a 2x. And so that's a shorthand for a multiple of that. A 2 times multiple, a 3 times multiple, 4 times multiple. That's what that means. Make sense? Okay, awesome. And so you start, they're going to come in with the lowest multiple, say, well, Spotify, let's say Pandora is only trading at 1.5x. And you walk in the room and say, yeah, but Disney Plus is trading at 10x. And then they'll say, well, not even Netflix is only 5x. Or they'll say Spotify has 200 million people and they're only 2.6x. And you say, well, Netflix is whatever. So you haggle and you try and be a comparable. So they'll try and put you in as many boxes as they possibly can. You'll try and break those boxes because you're a delusional founder and you're creating the next best thing in the world. And what I can tell you is having customers, whether those customers are business customers or regular consumers, having customers clamoring for your product and your growth going like this is you're in the best seat. And then you reach a certain point, you go back and forth, and that's how you end up with your valuation multiple. And then that's what they're willing to pay. And then based on cash and stock. And so sometimes founders are willing to take a lower multiple if it's cash, or they'll want a higher multiple if it's going to be a all stock deal. And then do you allow the founders at a price to take a certain percentage off the table so that they can go, pay their mortgage or buy a house, or I promised my wife I was going to take her on a trip, whatever. And that's when you get into kind of the nitty gritty of like the personal dealings going back and forth.
Great answer. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, people, come on, give me some good stuff. Don't be shy.
As we are in the process of wrapping up, and I'm sure there might be a few more questions out there, is there anything that you would do differently? And is there anything that you did do that you're happy that you did make that choice? There's 2 questions.
Great questions. The do differently is always, in hindsight, I would have went with another company, or I would have tried to put some caveats in the deal that kept us. It may have given them ownership of the board, but somehow would have been able to keep myself in position. but we were where we were. If they behaved, it would have worked out for all of us. But you know, what could you do? You just couldn't see it. So I don't know that I could have done anything differently there. I was really proud that I didn't let, so I will be very candid. My ownership, when we had the high valuation, my personal ownership was north of $80 million. And in under 12 months, I went from 80 million to zero and never got to take anything off the table after 12 years of building the company. So in hindsight, I would have put in caveats that when cash came in, we would have been able to take something off the table in case a catastrophic set of events happened that were unforeseen. We would have gotten something off. That's one thing I would have done differently. Thing I was proud of, I think, was I did not let losing my whole company debilitate me. And what I'm gonna say is very serious. There is a very high suicide rate among founders. People lose everything and they think that they have no more identity. They're filled with shame. They have debt. You have to be careful not to take yourself too seriously, that you end the game for yourself. And so there's been there's several founders that have classically gone and off themselves or drank themselves to death or overdosed because things didn't work out the way they wanted them to. So you got to be very careful to keep your mind right. For me, I was able to tap into my faith and walk through the valley of the shadow of death and use my tools that I was raised with to walk through that. So that's probably the thing I was most proud of. I didn't let them define me. I let God, who gave me my gifts, define me, and I ended up getting the whole company back at a fraction of the price. So was that did I answer both of them?
Yes, no, that's very inspiring. You know, I never, there's something I didn't think about, how, founding a business can, and if you lose it, and, so many entrepreneurs don't make it the first time out, but they do make it. But if you give up, these are the kinds of things that could possibly happen.
Yeah, and you'll get stuff and be successful. It goes all kind of ways. You just gotta be proud of the work you're doing and know you're building products that you're proud of. That's really, stay focused on that. Everything else is scenery. Jaheim has fun little question as an entrepreneur. How do you feel about the show Shark Tank? No one's ever asked me that question, and I have a great story. So first off, I got when MoviePass was really young, the Shark Tank producers reached out to us and said, "We'd like you to come on Shark Tank." And I said, I don't know, but send me the agreement and we'll look at it. And here's what people don't know. A, the show itself takes 20% of your business just for you to go on. B, the sharks, when they negotiate, they get a piece. And C, any deals that happen in the fine print, they have a right to never air your episode. So it's like, okay, even if I give them 20% because they're putting me on Shark Tank and I'm gonna get seen, they still get the 20%, even if they don't ever air your episode or your spot. And I read that thing and I was like, hell no, I'm not agreeing to that. Like, because some of the sharks are getting 30, 40, 50% for like $100,000. And there's another 20 already gone. These people going on these shows are losing 50% of their businesses, but you don't even know it. And sometimes it works out for them. I don't know what the financials, but I just believed in my business too much. And I respectfully declined. They came back, they asked another time. And the second time we we had gone, our valuation had increased to the point that it just didn't make sense to go on the show. And we respectfully said thank you, but turned them down twice. But yeah, I was like, oh, you guys are, because I don't know if you know, when people go on the singing shows, what they do is they sign you to a contract just to go on the show. So if you become big all of a sudden, they don't want Sony or Def Jam or somebody to swoop in and get you. So they literally sign a contract just for you to appear, even if they don't showcase you. Same kind of rules. And you're locked into that contract that's ironclad. You can't get out of it. So yeah, I was like, no, thank you.
I did not know that. They're stealing money.
Well, you know what?
For the vulnerable.
Look, they have a very large platform. They have millions of viewers. They can turn you into a star or instantly known product overnight, but you just have to weigh whether you want to do that or not. And many of those people who have had those careers have done well. I mean, you know, some of those they've done pretty good for themselves. So yeah.
Any more questions? Comments?
Well, this has been amazing, and everything that you guys have asked was really, really good questions. Hold on, there was a couple of things put in the chat. Yeah, okay, so yeah, I've answered everything. Well, this has been amazing. I had such a fun time doing this, and I do hope at some point to meet you guys in person. For those of you that are graduating or leaving and getting out, good luck in your endeavors out there. And if there's ever anything that I can do to be able to help, please let me know. But really appreciate you all. And as another entrepreneur, just want to say, don't give up, try hard, be great at what you do, be the best, and keep going.
I just want to say, I'm sure that the students got a lot out of this, but as a faculty member, my research is deeply inspired by this. I really hope to follow up with you, get some feedback on my research from you. I have some quotes, so you're going to probably end up in some of my papers, so you'll see your name.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you all, and really wonderful, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you. And thank all of the students and alumni who came out to support us today. Thank you, Mr. Spikes.
Absolutely. Have a great day, everybody.
All right. Take care, everyone.